Good evening, my good friends. This is actually a special episode, if that makes sense, of Creepy Critiques, where we're actually critiquing a movie that already came out. It just came out this year. So I'm doing things a little bit differently with this video. As you can see, it's nighttime, so there won't be any of that obnoxious glare from my window. And we got the mood lighting in the back. Yeah, let's get it. It's also another, I don't want to say it's unscripted. I also just hit my mouse. I'm sorry. I don't want to say it's an unscripted video, but it's a slightly less scripted video than I usually do. These videos are not going to be super often because I don't really get the opportunity to see brand new movies that come out until they're really on streaming, they really hit streaming. Although there's a few things that are coming that are on like Shutter or coming to Shutter that I do want to watch, so hopefully I'll be able to do some interviews. Hopefully I'll be able to do some videos for you guys then regarding those movies, but today we are going to talk about a movie that is genuinely a surprise to me. This came out of left field and just smacked me in the face. And I think that's how a lot of us feel about this movie. Maybe you're different. I don't know. But this is a movie that, in my opinion, I would call a sleeper, and that is The First Omen. So, this was something that when I saw the trailer, I kind of was just like immediately, like I was scrolling through TikTok and the trailer came up when I was scrolling through as an ad, and I watched the whole trailer, and then I just was like, swipe. I just didn't care, I didn't like it, I didn't like not I didn't like it like the trailer, I mean, like, I didn't actually, like, click on the little heart next to the thing, so I didn't hit the like button, which is what you should be doing right now, but I didn't hit the like button, and, I just kinda swiped past it. I was like, "Okay, yeah, another prequel movie about some thing that's old, you know." I mean, we just had The Exorcist Believer, which is a sequel, but we just had The Exorcist Believer, and we had the reboot of Halloween, and we've got all these other reboots and remakes and requels and all this stuff just happening, and I just was like, "Who cares?" Straight up, who cares? But the other day I was on Threads, and a friend of mine that is on Threads, she posted about this movie, and and she was just going on and on about The First Omen, and when I commented, I was like, is it really that good?" And she was like, "Yeah, girl, you need to watch it." So, I decided to sit down, me and my friend sat down and we watched it, and both of us were just genuinely surprised at how good this movie actually is. Now, before we get too far into my thoughts, I am going to do my plug here, my shameless plug. Please go ahead and like this video, subscribe. Also, I'm going to try my best to avoid spoilers, but I'm going to let you guys know right now. The Omen came out in the 70s. The original Omen movies, which we are going to go back and talk about, came out in the 70s. If you don't know what happened by now, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. There's really no way for me to accurately spoil this movie. Unless you're one of those people that doesn't like to hear like details about a movie, then I completely understand. But this is your spoiler warning, your spoiler alert. If you don't want to hear anything regarding this movie, skip it. Skip this video, go back, watch it on Hulu, and then come back and watch this video because this is just going to be a little review. I'm also not going to go through every single plot point of this movie because, to be quite honest, I did not take that close of notes. I'm going to go through certain things I loved about it, and this might be a shorter video. Who knows? I'm playing it by ear. I'm a yapper, so it's probably not going to be a shorter video. Let's just be 100% honest. Also, if you guys like see anything moving around in the darkness, it's just my cat. Don't worry about it. She's crouched by my feet right now because she is playing with a hair tie and she's waiting for me to throw it for her. So, but yeah. So that I just want to give you guys a spoiler warning if you don't want to know like what happens in the movie specifically, but I think we all kind of know, even if you haven't seen The Omen, you know the story of The Omen and Damien. And if you haven't, the first part of this video might be for you. So let's sit down, let's grab some snacks, grab some water, make sure you're staying hydrated out there, and let's get into this creepy critique. So if you don't know anything about the Omen series, then what are you doing here? The Omen is a quite an old film, and actually, it is a movie that I've never liked. Genuinely, no disrespect to the people who've made it. It is one of those movies that I think is very dated, and even at the time that I watched it, I was in high school when I watched it, and at the time that I watched it, it was dated. I'm not gonna tell you when that was when I was in high school, but it was a while ago. It's a very dated horror movie, and it kind of falls in line with, like, The Exorcist, where definitely was scary for the time that it came out, but now it's kind of seen as just a movie. But The Omen has had a lot of influence in pop culture, and it's been referenced a lot of times in pop culture. So just to give you a basic overview, this is not a synopsis that I've taken from the internet. This is just me summarizing it as best as I can from memory. So there's a family who is like involved in politics that cannot have a child of their own. So they decide to adopt a child and they end up with this child named Damien. And everything's normal until Damien's sixth birthday when weird stuff starts happening and the family starts to realize that their son might be the son of Satan. And he is, spoiler alert, I guess, he is. There's three movies about it. And the whole purpose of Damien's existence is that he is born of a jackal and a human woman. Jackal mated with the human, and the baby was born, and Damien is here, and his whole purpose is to come into power and bring like just bring chaos, bring destruction, bring death, and bring horrible things, basically, because he's the son of Satan. So I haven't seen The Omen 2 or The Omen 3. This is not a like I watched every movie so you don't have to video like I normally do, or not normally. I've only done one of those. Why am I talking like that? Maybe I'll do one. Maybe I'll do one on the Omen series. Who knows? This is just me giving you like a brief overview from what I remember and also what I've seen, other people talk about. But the movie is pretty much just about a young boy who is the son of Satan coming into power and bringing about chaos. Not the first movie, but the series, I guess I should say. And the first Omen is obviously what you would see here. My cat is trying to bite my toes right now. Obviously, what you would see here with the first Omen is this is the conception, this is the birth of Damien. Um, One thing I want to say is I saw a lot of people saying this was like the woke version of the Omen, and I'm like, did they think he didn't have a mother? I'm pretty sure they explicitly stated in the movie that he had a mom. So this is just them showing you the mom's story. Like it's not I don't know, man. We're not going to get into it. I thought it was funny that I kept seeing people be like, "Oh, it's the woke Omen," and I'm like, it's about his mom. Like, come on, he had a mom. Like obviously he was born somehow. But the first Omen came out earlier this year, and surprisingly enough, it did not do well. And I think that was another reason why I didn't care about the movie. And it's not even that I didn't hear any reviews about the movie. It's that I didn't hear any reviews. Like, I didn't hear any good reviews. I didn't hear any bad reviews until like the last couple of weeks where people started to kind of come in and say that they really liked the movie. It also, in my opinion, was a product of bad timing because a few weeks before this movie came out, a movie called Immaculate came out, which I've heard is basically the same movie. And I don't know whose idea it was to release these movies that are incredibly similar at the same time. Now, I don't know if they're the exact same movie. I don't know if they're the exact same movie because I haven't seen Immaculate. Immaculate is available for streaming, but you have to pay to watch it. And I'm one of those that I do not pay for a movie until I've watched it. Um, Immaculate, um, like goes like it has to do with a nun who I'm guessing gets pregnant, which is very similar to what this movie is, a nun who gets pregnant. So I think it was just a product of bad timing because people seem to really like Immaculate. When Immaculate came out, I heard that it was like one of the craziest movies of the year. I've heard that the ending was really hard to watch, and I do still want to watch it and give it its fair shake, but I haven't gotten around to watching it because I'm still waiting for it to be on streaming. So I think that's really the big issue with this movie is that it came out unfortunately around the same time as a movie with a very similar plot, and it kind of got buried underneath that movie because people really did like that movie. Again, that's just the consensus I heard. I don't know if it was a beloved movie or not. So let's get into some like factoids about the First Omen. So for anybody that is curious and doesn't feel like Googling it, it is on Hulu right now. It is streaming on Hulu. That's where I watched it. It was directed by Arkasha Stevenson, and from what I've heard, this is her second film that she's ever made. So kudos to her because this was awesome. And the cast, I'll just give you a notable three of the cast. The main character is played by Nell Tiger Free. Ralph Ineson, who was in The Witch, is in it, and also, I'm probably going to say his name wrong, Bill Nighy. I think that's how you say it. Davy Jones, if you've seen Pirates of the Caribbean, like I have, and also in a million other things. Love Actually. I mean, guy's been around forever, so like, I'm just saying Davy Jones because I'm a nerd. The critical reception isn't terrible for this. On IMDb, it has 6.6 out of 10, and on Rotten Tomatoes, it has 81%, and on Letterboxd, it has 3.4. It averages between that. Um, Pretty good ratings for a movie that's like a prequel overall. So here's the synopsis, and it is a basic synopsis, just in case you're wondering. A woman starts to question her own faith when she uncovers a terrifying conspiracy to bring about the birth of evil incarnate in Rome. Super basic, super easy, doesn't give a lot away about the plot at all. But yeah, so let's get into what I liked about this movie first before we get into anything else. So, to talk about what I really did enjoy about this movie, I kind of have to talk about some of the finer points of the storytelling. Um, One of the things that really I just loved overall was the story. Like, let's just be quite honest, the story was really awesome. For Sorry, that was my cat, and I think she ran into the side of my bed because she's playing with a toy. She doesn't value her life, apparently. I don't know if you guys could hear that, but yeah, she just like ran into my bed and there was a loud bang. It scared me. Um, yeah, so the story, for it being a prequel story, is pretty simple. It follows Margaret, who has basically been an orphan her entire life, and she's now devoted her life to the church. She's from America, and she's coming over to Rome to finally finish her, I don't know what they call it for nuns, but her nun school basically. I'm sorry, it's probably the stupidest way to put it, but she's basically like becoming, she's finishing her confirmation, I think is what it is, so she can become a full-blown nun, you know, give her life over to God, etc., etc. But Margaret has had a really rough childhood because, like I said, she was an orphan and she grew up in like a girls' home, an orphanage, and they just mistreated her from the sounds of it. They would chain her to a bed, they would lock her in a room. There is so much banging going on over there. I'm so sorry. My cat is playing with a box now. Um, but yeah, they chained her to a bed, they kept her locked in a room, they isolated her from all the other girls, and they claimed it was because she was incredibly violent and that she was dangerous. And so she is kind of emotionally scarred from all of this. And when she gets to the school, she ends up meeting a girl by the name of Catalina who is the same like her. She's kept in a room isolated. All of the nuns are like, she's incredibly dangerous, don't go near her. In fact, when they first meet, Catalina like licks Margaret's face, which is just wild, like absolutely wild in my opinion, to just lick somebody's face upon first meeting. She also does stumble upon them chaining her to a bed and performing some sort of ritual. And she becomes incredibly attached to this girl because she sees herself in this girl, and she's very protective of Catalina, and that is a huge deal to her. Meanwhile, kind of a subplot, but still important to the plot, there's a priest played by Ralph Ineson, and he was told in the beginning of the movie that they need to find this baby. They show him a picture of like a baby with a bunch of like nuns and priests, and they're like, this baby girl is about to birth the Antichrist. Like, she should be of age now to like get busy and birth a demon baby. So they're like, so he's on the hunt for this girl, and he's everybody's pretty much convinced that it's probably Catalina that they're getting ready to impregnate and birth. But you know, it doesn't make much sense. There's also this kind of interesting sort of subplot that the orphanage that Margaret is working at now, for some reason, houses a lot of pregnant women. And they claim it's because a lot of these women don't have places to go, but there's one scene, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it is trigger warning, it is incredibly traumatic to watch, and it literally dropped my jaw. And it's not gory, but it is disgusting. And I'm not saying it disgusting, like, for those of you who've seen it, you know what scene I'm talking about. I'm not saying it's disgusting because of, like, what I'm saying disgusting because of the thought process. As a female presenting person, that was terrifying to me in a different way. It wasn't terrifying to me in the way of like, "Oh my god, I'm never gonna sleep again," or whatever. It was just like, "Oh, I don't want that. I don't want I don't want that. That can stay over there." When Margaret stumbles upon a woman who is giving birth and sees what she is giving birth to, and that's all I'm gonna leave it at. I'm just telling you guys that much because whoa. That's all I can say is whoa. Yikes. It did drop my jaw. Me and my best friend were like literally screaming at the TV, like, "Wow, what the hell?" Like, we were screaming at the TV, which is very rare for like me to do. Even like on my jaw, I was covering my mouth. I was like, "Oh no!" So yeah, it's nasty. Just be prepared for that if you do sit down to watch this movie. That there's a scene, but this orphanage seems to have an affinity for pregnant women, and you find out that with the time period that we're in the early 70s. This movie takes place in 1971. There is a lot of unrest in the world. As we know, just from existing, there's a lot of political unrest in most countries. There, in most countries, there's a lot of political unrest. In America, you're coming off of the civil rights movement, and there's just a lot of tension in the world, and people are turning away from the church. For many people, like if you just pay attention to like history, this is like the start of the sexual revolution, the start of disco, the start of like substance abuse and all those types of things. Like people were turning away from God. And this particular church in Rome was like, we don't like that. We don't like that they're turning away from God. So we will eventually uncover what the plot is, but I'm pretty sure you know where we're going based on the series' existence. But going back to Margaret, Margaret is starting to have all of these weird things happen to her. She goes out clubbing with one of the other nuns, which I thought was interesting. Like, you're training to be nuns, but you're going out clubbing and getting drunk and like hooking up with guys. Like, nuns don't do that. Maybe in the 70s they did. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe in Italy they did. They do. I don't know. If you know any nuns in Italy, please let me know. But yeah, so she goes out clubbing one night. She meets this guy named Paolo. They're getting kind of hot and heavy, and she blacks out. She wakes up the next day. She's in her bed. Her friend is like, "You were wild last night, girl. Oh my god, how much did you have to drink?" She later finds out that she bit this man. She bit him, full on bit this guy. And then she finds him in the street and she tries to talk to him, and he says, "Look for the mark," and taps his head before getting hit by a car and pinned to the wall. And when Margaret goes to help him, she just lifts his torso off of his body. Uh, yeah, gets hit by a car. So eventually, Ralph Ineson's priest does find Margaret, and he's like, "Hey, so I hate to break it to you, but we need to find this girl. You need to tell us what's going on, and we need to find this girl." And she's like, "I know what girl you're talking about. She is kept away from all the other girls. She's isolated. In fact, a nun just burned herself alive because of this girl. So it's got to be her, right? It's got to be her." And then he's like, "Well, yeah, look for the mark." So at one point, she does help Catalina kind of escape, but the other nuns who had already told her to stay the hell away from Catalina find them running and kind of blockade them in, and they end up in a room. And when the nuns are dragging Catalina away, she's screaming, and at the roof of her mouth you can see the 666 symbol. If you've seen The Omen, you know what the symbol looks like, but it's just basically a cluster of sixes. And so she's like, Margaret's like, "Oh shoot, dude, that's the girl, that's the mark, that's the girl, this is the girl, this is the girl." So she goes and she lets the priest know, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know about that. Let's go through all these files." Margaret steals all these files, and they start going through them, and she realizes that the picture that he has somewhat seems familiar. She pieces one file with the picture and realizes that the picture was taken from that file. And as she is like realizing this, she has a flashback to her being impregnated by the jackal. Now, just in case anybody's worried about watching this movie because of like SA, um, you don't see anything. It is they don't even show they only show you the part where she's like being put on the table, and then the jackal, you kind of see the jackal coming out, and then you do see it roar in her face, and then like that's it. You don't see anything weird or sus happening. So if you're worried about that, it's about as spicy, or I don't like saying spicy in a situation like that, but that's about as like rough as it gets. So yeah, I like they show you that she got impregnated by the jackal and she loses it. Margaret just starts screaming and crying because she completely forgot. She rubs the top of her head where Paolo was pointing when he got hit by the car, and she is freaking out because she can feel it. And the priests go and part her hair, and they see that she has the mark of the devil on her head, this the cluster of sixes. So she loses it, and she's like, I don't remember. I didn't remember any of this. Like, I did not know I was pregnant. Like, this is the craziest episode of I didn't know I was pregnant, like, of all time. Like, it genuinely is super crazy when you think about it that way. The Then the priest unveils what the plan is and why they chose to do this. Because basically, when she gets all those files, you can see that so yeah, they've been breeding these women with jackals for so freaking long, and these women are like basically, just like giving birth to these babies that either are incredibly like defective and like pass away soon after they're born, or just girls, which they don't want a girl, they want a boy, because boys are like, people are going to follow the boys, they're not going to follow the girls, they're going to follow the boys, right? So like they're just impregnating these, they're having these babies, waiting till they're a certain age, impregnating them by the jackal, and then seeing what they give birth to, and then if they don't give birth, then they move on to the next one. I have to sit here with my child for a second because she is getting antsy. Say hi. She's a little sniff. She's getting antsy right now, so I have to sit with her for a minute. But yeah, so that's what they're doing, and the reason why they're doing this is crazy in my opinion, because why they're doing this has to do with the fact that they have seen how the world has turned from God and turned from the church as like a source of comfort and a source of reliability in all of these trying times, and they've decided we need to bring something so heinous, so evil, that people will have no choice but to come back to us. So, plot twist, I guess, not really, but plot twist. I don't know. I've never seen the other two movies, and I don't know if this is something that's in the other two movies. So, like, forgive me. I didn't do research on the Omen 2 or the Omen 3. Um, but I guess plot twist, the church made Damien. The church made Damien. So, they did it themselves, which is just kind of the icing on the shit cake for me personally. I'm just like, wow, like you created your own monster. Why would you do that? Like that doesn't make any sense. It does make sense, but it doesn't make any sense at the same time. In any case, at that point, when Margaret and the priest realize that it's her and realize that she's pregnant, they also realize that it's coming real close to her delivery time. And like obviously, she hasn't through the entire movie, I will put it to you this way. She don't look pregnant, she don't act pregnant. There's no pregnancy symptoms. The next scene, they're driving to try to take her to a location to figure out what to do next, and they realize that they're being followed. As they realize that they're being followed, Margaret starts to finally exhibit pregnancy symptoms, aka she throws up. And she's, panicking, and she's going, what's going on with me? Someone eventually crashes into their car, which is the, people from the other church, people from the church that she's working at. And we get this really long sequence. I don't know how to describe this sequence. If you've ever seen the movie Possession, it's like a really old movie, and there's like a scene where this woman is in the subway, like, and she's just like having a fit, basically. It's kind of like that scene. Like, it was very reminiscent of Possession. Um, I can't see where my cat is, and I keep like looking because I'm like, I don't hear her, but she's laying on my bed right now, cleaning herself. We're good. Yeah, so it's very reminiscent of Possession, which I thought was pretty cool. So she's basically gets out of the car and she just starts like grunting and groaning, and she's like convulsing. Her body's like not cracking, like she's not like breaking into like weird like positions, like unnatural positions, but she's kind of like her like, jolting everywhere. And as she's doing that, her stomach starts to get bigger. And it's now apparent that she is very pregnant. And after that happens, the other people she passes out, the other people from the church grab her and bring her into the room for delivery time. And this is where we get a pretty graphic depiction, like not super graphic, but pretty graphic depiction of a cesarean section, which was like an absolute nope for me. I've never had kids, and like this is something that I just like C-sections. To all the women who out there, if there's any women out there who've had C-sections, you're my hero, because when people have described them to me, they scare the crap out of me. I'm like, why? It's a pretty graphic depiction. It's not super terrible, but it is a pretty graphic depiction of a cesarean section. You do see incisions being made, you see the babies being removed, and what's another plot twist for people who know the Omen, is that Damien has a sister, like an actual sister, like he was born a twin. Um, and so they pull the babies out. Damien's sister is there, and they realize they finally got their boy. All the nuns and priests gather around and they hold him, and they see the 666 on his head, and they're like, we have him, and they start playing the music from the original Omen, which I was like, yes, I got all hype. Even though I don't really like the movie, I do like the music, so I got hyped about that. I was like, yeah, it's so cool, I love that moment. So then they leave the temple, and they basically like, okay, set her on fire and set the whole room on fire. Let's burn the mom and the other baby. We don't need them anymore. So, um, you know, Margaret's laying there. She had been actually, I forgot, she was stabbed after having a cesarean section. They cleaned her up. They stitched her up or whatever they did. I think they stitched her up. And then she was like, no, you can't take my baby. And then she did go to try to stab Damien, but she couldn't do it. So she was like, no, you guys can't take my baby. And then the nuns, I think her name was like Sister Sylvia or something, came up and stabbed her. And I'm like, the woman just had a C-section. Why are you stabbing her? Come on. Like a C-section and then you stab her. Like, what is wrong with you? But yeah, she stabs her, and then they take the baby, and then that's when they decide to burn the temple to the ground. And as Margaret is in there clutching her daughter, like gasping for air, just freaked out, knowing that this might be the end of them, Catalina comes in like Wonder Woman. She comes in and pulls both of them out and saves the day. So now we get to the end, the wrap up of the film. I know I said I wasn't going to do a whole synopsis of the film, but I pretty much just did. This is why it helps to have a script. But yes, no, at the end of the movie, we see the bad priests, and they're taking Damien to the Washington to find this family. And they're, talking about the family, and they actually show you the file of the family, and it's the family from the original first movie. And they're like, yeah, blah, blah, we're going to just place him with them because they've got this power, da, da, da. And then it cuts to Margaret still in a different like city, and she's living now with Catalina and her daughter, who I don't know what her daughter's name is. I'm sorry, they didn't give her a name. She's living with them. They have like a pretty normal life. So they're laughing, they're joking, they're having dinner, and it's just like a nice little family moment. And then at the end of the film, like the priest shows up, Ralph Ineson's priest shows up, and Margaret comes out with a gun pointing it at him, and she's just like, why are you here? I just want to be left alone, da da da. And he's like, Margaret, they know you're still alive. They know you and the daughters are still alive. They're coming for you. They're gonna find you. And she's like, I just want to be left alone. Like, I don't care. Like, just leave me alone at this point. And he's like, well, I thought you should know that they named your son. And then like she's kind of just like looking at him, and he's like, his name is Damien. And that's when the movie ends, and we're just like, okay. And yeah, that's the synopsis of the First Omen. I was supposed to be talking about the things I liked about it in this section, but I guess we talked about the entire movie. But thank goodness I gave you that spoiler alert in the beginning. Right? So now we can get into what I liked about the movie, because I'm all over the place when I don't have a script. So, the first thing I will say I loved about this movie, and I'm not like an expert, so don't take my word for it, but I thought the cinematography in this film was really beautiful. Not even just like the fact that there was a lot of aerial shots of Rome, because obviously like that's just aerial shots of a city, but like even just some of the framing of some of the shots and the different like sequences that were trippy and you just didn't know what was real and what wasn't. I really liked those moments in the movie. It kind of like made me more engaged in the film because this is not like this is not a jump scary film. It's not a gory film. It's really not any of those things. Like I had this vision in my mind from the way people talked about it that it was a gore fest or like, super body horror, jump scary, gnarly, because I mean it's a possession movie. And there really wasn't a lot of that. It's a very dialogue heavy movie, very reminiscent of the original Omen, but what really kind of like pulls you in, or at least pulled me in, was the cinematography. The cinematography was beautiful. It was a beautifully shot movie. Also, the the acting was incredible from everybody that was involved. I think there was only one scene that I thought was silly. It was like a jump scare moment, and it was like a moment where Margaret was having like nightmares about her childhood, and she wakes up and you see like the corner of a room, and like the curtain is blowing and you hear like a nun talking before that, and then like the curtain blows and there's a nun and she turns around and she's like, oh, like she makes like a weird noise. Like we were making fun of it for like a good 5 minutes after that, because I was like, why did she just like moan? Why did she moan? Like it wasn't scary. It was just kind of like, okay, like that was a little goofy, but that was really the only part that like took me out of the movie for like a little while, and then I was like back in. But that was really the only part. But other than that, like the acting was phenomenal. Nell Tiger Free, like I've never seen her in anything before. She ate in this role. She ate, especially the scene when she's finally like getting pregnant. It was so uncomfortable to watch. Like not like it was almost one of those things where it's like you couldn't look away because it was going on for so long and you just kept going like what's going to happen, what's going to happen next. But like she acted it so well, like her physicality in that scene, like you could tell something was really affecting her, and the way she's just convulsing and like grunting and like screaming, like I'm like, oh, it's like uncomfortable to watch. It's like I don't want to keep watching because it's like ew, like you're making me uncomfortable, but at the same time I can't tear my eyes from the screen because it's just so good. Like your acting is so like incredible. So she absolutely ate in this role. Um she sold me on this character, and all the way up to the point where like at the end I definitely was like, yeah, I'd love to see more of this character. I'd love to bring back Margaret. Bring back Margaret 2024. Bring her back. um I mentioned before that it's not too gory. There are scenes of gore. Obviously, there are two pretty realistic scenes of childbirth, and if that's something you can't handle, I would seriously avoid this movie. But for someone like me, like I don't have a huge issue with gore. Like I can handle gore for like the most part, but I was kind of relieved to finally sit down and watch a horror movie that didn't rely on gore as like its scare factor. The one childbirth scene that I told you that I'm not going to fully spoil for you because I do think it's something you should see with your own eyes, was jaw dropping, but it was scary for a whole different reason. It wasn't scary for like a, you know, ooga booga reason. It was scary for a whole different reason. But it's not super gory, and save for those couple of scenes that are pretty like nasty, like it doesn't rely on the gore. It's not heavy on the gore. I love the fact that um even knowing that Margaret was the mother, because the trailer I saw, like it made it obvious that Margaret was the mother, so that wasn't really like a plot twist, but you could tell when they were writing the movie that they wanted it to be a plot twist. But even with going into the movie knowing that Margaret is going to be the mom and she's going to have Damien, I still was really like impressed with how they finessed that moment where she when she realizes that she's been impregnated by the jackal and she has the whole flashback and like sees herself being impregnated. I keep looking back there because my cat's trying to get on my nightstand and get into one of my pill bottles, and I'm like, bro, can you stop? Oh my goodness. It's like having a toddler sometimes. But yeah, she like that moment is such a good moment, and I really wish that the trailers had been super duper ambiguous on who the mom could have been, because it was obvious. Like I saw, like if you've never seen a trailer, that moment probably would have been the jaw dropper for you. But for me, seeing the trailer and the hyper fixation and the hyper focus on Margaret through the entire trailer, I'm like, okay, so it's a movie about this woman birthing Damien. So I went into the movie already knowing that Margaret was the mother. So when I was watching the movie and they kept talking about like, oh, the baby, we have to find the child. I'm like, she's right there. She's right there. Like, she's the mom. We know. We saw the trailer. So I kind of wish the trailers didn't do that. I kind of wish the trailers had left it super duper ambiguous so you didn't know. Because, like I said, you could tell that the writer of the film wanted that to be the pin drop moment when she remembers the impregnation and she's like, oh my God, it's me. Like, I'm the one birthing the spawn of Satan. Like, I'm the one birthing him. That would have been such an awesome moment to experience without knowing that Margaret was the mother of Damien. But again, you might disagree with me. You might watch the movie and say that it's really obvious from the beginning, regardless of whether you know or not, that Margaret is going to be the mother. I'm starting to lose my voice. I was sick this week, and that's why this video is coming later than usual. But yeah, no, it's just I just wish they would have kept that like ambiguous. However, one thing I will say about this movie that I absolutely love is that for the first time in my life personally, I care about the Omen. I care about this series. And I almost want to like step back and like look at the people that invested in this movie. I know it didn't make the money they were hoping it made and go, dude, you need to do a series, but it needs to be a series that doesn't just focus solely on Damien and, the son of Satan thing. It needs to also focus on Margaret. Whether it focuses on Margaret making the decision to try and find her son and stop him, or even if it doesn't focus on Margaret, even if it focuses on Catalina and it focuses on Catalina, maybe, or even his other sister, like his twin sister, or the three of them all together, just understanding the purpose that Damien has, understanding how bad that is, and trying to stop him in some way, shape, or form, with the evil church trying to stop them. Like, there's so much more you can dive into, because one of my biggest problems with the Omen movie that I always had when I was younger was that it just was so boring. There wasn't anything to it. It was just a bunch of talking, and then like this little boy that's like evil, but we don't know what he's doing because he's not really doing much, but just standing there and being like that's all he's doing is just standing there and staring at people and like looking creepy. So it just would have been nice. Like I said, I haven't seen the second or third one. I will do a video on all three movies, but like I'm just like it would have just been so nice to get a little bit more and to have those stakes of having like not only his aunt, because Catalina is technically his aunt, but not only his aunt, but his twin sister and his mother still being out there and in a way still being a threat to the mission, while the church is also trying to find those three and stop those three from stopping him. Like there's things they could do with it. Obviously, I'm not a screenwriter. I don't think they're gonna revisit this. A, it didn't make a ton of money, and B, I just don't think they're gonna. They already remade the Omen like almost 20 years ago now, and it'll be 20 years in 2 years, which is gross. They already remade The Omen and it didn't do well, so I don't think they're gonna try that again. Then again, this is Hollywood. They remake everything, so they might try to do it, and I think this would be the time to do it because you actually have a solid jumping off point where you can include these three characters and their plight as being related to Damien and knowing what Damien is capable of because of knowing what the church is doing and trying to stop him or trying to protect people from him. Like it doesn't have to solely focus on them. It could focus on just Damien and his family, but have them kind of as a quote unquote threat in the background that they could come at any minute to stop him. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing right now, but I think there's a lot of potential for there to be a lot more in this film, personally. And to be quite honest, the way this movie like reads, I guess you would say, the way this movie sort of is framed reminded me a lot of the movie Saint Maud, which came out in 2020. And I watched that movie for the first time last year for my podcast, and um That movie blew me away. Like, I could not stop thinking about that movie for, like, a good week after I watched it. It unsettled me, and it made me super uncomfortable and very sad, like, very sad. And this movie didn't give me that exact feeling, like, I wasn't sad after I watched it. In fact, like, if I were to sit down and choose which one would I wanna rewatch, Saint Maud or The First Omen, I'm going with The First Omen because I feel like The First Omen was more, quote, unquote, "fun" to watch, but Saint Maud was a slog to get through, and not in a boring way. It just was really heavy and really intense, and it sat too much in my spirit for me to sit down and rewatch it again. Whereas this movie, I could probably put it on right now as I'm making this video and just rewatch it because it was like it was more of a popcorn version of Saint Maud, but it definitely had those elements of Saint Maud that I really liked because I loved Saint Maud. I thought it was a fantastic film. It's just not a film that is like an easy rewatch for me. It's very difficult to rewatch. So overall, like those are the things I loved about The First Omen, and I genuinely cannot I cannot stress that enough. I loved this movie. But there were some things that I didn't like, not too many surprisingly, and I'm going to get into those little bitty things like right now. So just for prosperity, because this video is probably not going to be the same length as what I'm recording right now, but it's almost been an hour, and because I was sick this past week, I'm starting to lose my voice. But I'm going to keep going. So I did just chug a bunch of water. So hopefully that helps. So I don't really have a ton of things I disliked about this movie. This is one of those movies that I feel like I genuinely just cannot put my finger on anything that I hated. But one of the things I think I didn't like about this movie was that there weren't a lot of scares. It is a very dialogue heavy movie. It relies more on you paying attention to the story surrounding it than it does like the scares, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing, but given the way people I've spoken to have talked about this film, I was expecting it to be scarier, like, or to have a little bit more scares. There were very little jump scares. Again, a lot of it was reliant on your brain and how your brain operates when you watch it. I can see this movie, for me, it's like right up my alley. It's perfect. I love it. I can see this movie being boring to a lot of people. I can see it. I can see why it has such a huge ratio of a rating on multiple different platforms. I can see why it did not do well in theaters. Not because it's a bad film, but because it is a film that lacks a lot of action. It's kind of like when you go and you watch like for example, like let's say like a Star Wars movie. A lot of the times you go to watch a Star Wars movie, you're kind of just going for the lightsaber battles. You really don't care about all of the politics in between. And if the movie's really dialogue heavy and it's mostly focusing on like all of the politics, you kind of start to tune it out a little bit. And I can see that happening with people if that's not their thing for The First Omen. It's I won't say it's an acquired taste because it is a pretty basic horror movie, and I kind of think that it's not super complicated of a horror movie. It's very easy to follow. It doesn't go veer off from the plot too much, and it unfolds in a pace, in my opinion, that's really like well done. However, again, there's not a lot of action in the movie, and I can see it losing some people halfway through, or not even. I can see it losing some people right in the beginning, where you're just sitting there going, okay, I'm waiting for something to happen. I'm waiting for something to happen. Oh, nothing's happening really. Okay. All right, I'm bored. This is boring. I don't like this. So I think that's like one of my things where I say like what I say is like a bad thing about it is that it's not that scary. There's not enough motion. There's not enough action in the movie to really keep a lot of people hooked. In my opinion, it takes a certain kind of person to enjoy this film. And if you're not that kind of person, you're not going to like this movie. Simple as that. And it's okay if you don't. Like I said, I mean, I love this movie. It is so far my favorite movie in general, not even just my favorite horror movie, but it's my favorite 2024 movie so far. I haven't watched anything better yet that's come out this year, but we'll see. We'll see. There's lots that's still coming out. Um I really like this movie, and that it's my style of movie. It's like when people say to me that they don't like the movie Hereditary. Anybody who knows me knows that Hereditary is my favorite like horror movie of all time. Scream is my favorite slasher movie, and it's my second favorite horror movie. But Hereditary is my favorite horror movie of all time. And it's also probably high up there in my list of favorite movies of all time. And I've had people tell me that Hereditary is a boring ass movie and they just can't understand why I love it so much. And it's because I don't need there to be constant jump scares. I don't need there to be a crap ton of gore. I don't need there to be like a lot of stuff happening to keep me engaged. That movie, when I first watched it, the funny story, like I don't want to go too much off of the movie we're talking about, but when I first watched it, I watched it with my friend and she was like, I had to look up what was going on. So like she was all excited. She was like, I had to look up what was going on when I after I watched this. And she kept pausing the movie and was like, do you understand this part? Like, let me explain it to you. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I actually am paying attention. So I know what's going on. Like I'm piecing the pieces together. And I like movies like that where it's not everything's not explained to you. It's not in your face. It's not thrown at you, but it's also explained to you as you go along. And then by the time you get to the end, it's like, ah, we've now connected everything back to each other and everything is great. So that's just like the reason why I like this movie, but I can understand why a lot of people didn't and may not like this movie because there's nothing really aside from the one scene which isn't even a scare necessarily. It's more gross and uncomfortable. Aside from the one birth scene, like it's not scary, and there's gonna be people who aren't afraid of that, or not afraid, but they're like not bothered by that, and then there's gonna be people who are like me that are were like, "Ooh, Lord, no, take that back," you know. So I just personally think that like it could have had more going on just so it could have probably made its money back. I don't really care personally. Like honestly, like I said, I was fine with the pacing of the movie. I was fine with there being a lack of scares. I just know what horror fans are looking for, and I just know that a lot of this movie ain't it. Um, and then the only other thing I could think of that I really didn't care for was obviously the graphic depictions of childbirth. Especially the C-section scene. I couldn't watch that. And again, that's because like I said in the last section, I really just don't like the idea of C-sections. Just the whole concept of them is and not even uncomfortable. It's scary to me. Like it's scary. Like it's not scary in the like I'm losing sleep way. It's scary in the like, oh my god, they are mutilating my body. And I know it's to save a baby's life and it's great at the end, but at the same time I'm just like I said, I salute you women who have had those done to you because you're G's. You're G's. If they told me that I needed a C-section on the table, they better be giving me some heavy duty substances so I can not remember that. And I know they can't. I know they can't because I know enough people who have had C-sections, so I know they can't do that. That's the thing. Is like that is like my worst fear. So yeah, no, I that's the only other thing I can think of. I really don't have too many massive critiques. The story to me wasn't super convoluted. It was very easy to understand. Like I didn't even have to suspend my disbelief. Like the church the church doing this makes sense to me because they obviously want to save people, and if the people aren't coming to them to be saved, how else are they going to do what else are they going to do? So they create a problem so that they have a reason to be the heroes. And it's kind of a story that happens in a lot of movies where somebody creates the problem so that they can be the hero, so that they can come out on top, like, hey, we saved you, see, we saved you guys, we fixed everything, everything's great. And that's kind of why I like the story too, because that like I said, I never saw the Omen 2 or 3, and I don't really remember much about the Omen 1. I know the basic base level plot of that movie. If you know more about this movie, feel free to correct me in every way, shape, or form and tell me, like, no, actually, they mentioned the church in the Omen 3, and if you watched that movie, you would know. But just from the basic knowledge I had, the church really wasn't fully mentioned. To this extent, and the idea, and at least I guess maybe because pop culture has taken it and it's like, oh yeah, he was born of a jackal, and you automatically think in your mind that it was like a satanic church that did this, because who in their right mind that is Catholic would do this? Who in their right mind, like you think in your mind like, yeah, that's not something that a Catholic would do. That's something that's, well, who, what Catholic is summoning a jackal to impregnate a woman? Like no, that just doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of why I was like, yeah, no, I never knew that the church was involved in Damien's creation. And knowing that changes everything for me because it shows me that all this time the church was trying to create a villain so that they could step in to be the heroes. And I'm imagining that backfired because, like I said, I haven't seen the second or third one, so I'm guessing it backfired. I'm not sure. I'm guessing it backfired. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the bad things. I have some side tangents I want to go on real quick. I know this video's already been long as it is, but I do have some side tangents I want to go on really quick. So let's go on those side. Let's take a little hop, skip, and a jump to the side quests. So a quick little bit of like side quest information. The first thing I wanted to talk about is that there actually is a Omen inspired video game. I'm sure if you've been on the internet or not the internet, but been on YouTube for any semblance of time and watched gaming YouTube, you've probably run into this game at some point in time, and it's called Lucius. Basically, you get to play as Lucius, who is essentially Damien, and this is after his birthday. This is after he turns 6, and he just starts massacring everyone that works for his family and is in his family. And you get to do it. You get to do what the massacre basically. Um, I've never played the game. I have it. I tried playing it, and for some reason, it locked up in the tutorial, and I could not get past it in like the beginning of the game. So I've only played like the first mission, quote unquote. But I've always wanted to play it. It's not like a AAA game. It's an indie game, obviously, but it's not like a massively like polished game. It's very interesting of a game. It looks like so much fun, and I've seen so many people on YouTube play it, and it just looks like a lot of fun. Maybe someday I will get it to work and I'll actually play it. But I thought I'd share that with you, and I do believe that they actually made 3 Lucius games. So, like, if you ever are on Steam and you want to play a game where you get to, be Damien, essentially, go check out Lucius, because it's a fun, kind of hokey, kind of silly game, and I would highly recommend it. I've never played it, but I'd recommend it. The next thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit more serious when it comes to this, and it's something that has, when I was writing this synopsis script that I have for this, I wanted to talk about because I do think that it is interesting to touch on this when you talk about films of this sort. Um, I watched a show back in I think 2021 called Cursed Films. It's on Shudder. It's like a documentary style show where they talk about films that are infamous for being quote unquote cursed. And The Omen is actually the second episode of this show. And this is the original movie, not the movie we just talked about. And a lot of people were injured or died when making this film. And of course, it got attributed to the subject matter of this film. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I wanted to sort of touch on my personal feelings about labeling a film as quote unquote cursed. There's sort of a rhetoric that has existed in like media for a very long time. What you consume can harm you, and to an extent I believe that, but to the extent that some of these people believe, it gets to be a lot at times. Some of these people think it's like Samara in The Ring, where it's just gonna come out the TV and get you. um and the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because eventually I am going to do a video on the film Poltergeist, which I know this is like a huge tangential thing, but I did say this was the tangential part of this video, so you knew. Because Poltergeist is one of those films that I love, and it's also one of those films that people constantly attribute to being incredibly cursed because of the skeleton thing. And I'm not going to go too deep into it because I do want to talk about this as a separate subject. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because The Omen was featured in the show, and Poltergeist was also featured in the show. And I think it's very interesting as a society that we call movies cursed, and we attribute bad things that happen on set to curses or like evil influences. Um, and it is a little bit worrisome. Sometimes I wonder if it is just something to try to sell the mystique of the film. For example, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, one of the women who played, well, not one of the women, the woman who played the lawyer. I don't really know much about the movie. I've seen it once. I didn't like it. But the woman who played the lawyer said that she kept waking up around the same time as her character was waking up in the movie. I don't remember the exact time, but and I just wonder if again, if that's just a way to sell the horror of the film. Um, that being said, this is one movie, The Omen, where I'm not entirely sure they were wrong. Because the stuff that happened to, like, the people that were filming the movie definitely makes me wonder if someone was trying some divine force was trying to get them to stop making this film. I'm not gonna go too deep into it because eventually I might make a movie. I might make a video about all 3 Omen movies, and I'll talk about it further then, but I just think it's really interesting because there's a lot of movies that people deem cursed films, and, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with, like, The Wizard of Oz was cursed or, um, The Crow. People say The Crow was cursed, and I'm like, "That's so disrespectful to Brandon Lee's memory, but okay." And then obviously, like I said, I am gonna make a video on the poltergeist curse because it is something that pisses me off that people still perpetuate to this day in the year of our Lord 2024 when there's enough information available about what happened to those who passed away that it makes me super angry that people still like poltergeist is cursed. Like it's not cursed. What happened to those, especially the young women in that it happened to, was a tragedy. So let's call it what it is, but we'll get into that later. We'll talk about that in another video. But The Omen is one of those the only movies I feel like is incredibly cursed, and that could also be why I've never messed with it. Like I've never messed with it. I'm not a super superstitious person. I'm not like religious really. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. But something about the thought of that movie kind of icks me out, even down to like the music. And, as much as I cheered when the music played in The First Omen, I definitely, like, was kinda like, "Oh gosh, we're not bringing this guy back, are we?" But, yeah, if you ever do get the chance, if you have Shudder or anything like that, I know they actually have Shudder on AMC Plus now, so if you have AMC Plus and you have Shudder, if you have Shudder, check out that series because it's awesome. It dives into why people think certain films are cursed. Each episode is based off of a different movie. Even like they even talk about Cannibal Holocaust, which there was so much I did not know about that movie. Like that movie's wild. Cannibal Holocaust is a wild movie, but anyways, I digress. And like I said, The Omen is the second episode that they talk about, and it is just interesting to see how with for a lack of a better word, how cursed that that production was. And it is the only movie throughout all of the movies they talk about in both season 1 and season 2 that I'm like, that one might be cursed. That one actually might be cursed. Let's not rule that out that somebody was trying to stop them from making that film. No disrespect to the people who were harmed during that film, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, it definitely does not seem kosher in my opinion. But that is a tangent that I just wanted to go on just to A, kind of give you a preview of some content that I've been thinking of covering at some point, and then B, also kind of tell you my thoughts there on that. And then also tell you about the video game because I just think the video game's fun. I just think it's such a like a fun concept. I love video games where you get to play as the villain, so like I'm all about it. But anyways, let's get into my final thoughts. So, this movie, I went into this movie not really expecting much of anything. In fact, I had no desire to watch this movie, and it was really something that I was going to avoid, if I'm being completely honest. It was something I was gonna completely avoid and maybe just come around to watching it one day when I was bored or someone was like, "Hey, let's watch it together," you know? But, I genuinely had no interest in this film. I've never cared for the original Omen series, and I've never cared and I didn't care for the trailer when I saw this movie. So it is a huge, huge thing that this movie is currently like my reigning champ of horror movies of this year and also like movies in general because I haven't seen a lot of movies that have come out in 2024. I believe I've only seen one so far, which is Late Night with the Devil, which I'm not even gonna talk about that one because I don't like it. I did not like that movie. Um, like, so basically, I haven't seen a lot of movies that have come out in 2024. I've been actually catching up on a lot of movies that have come out in 2023 and 2022 that I missed. And but right now this one is my reigning champ for 2024. I have yet to see anything that's topped it, and maybe I will. I'm sure I will. There's plenty of stuff coming out this year that I think I might like better than this movie, but this was a pleasant surprise, and even if there's anything that comes and derails it later this year, I'm gonna have a lot of love for this movie for a long time coming because it really shocked the hell out of me that it ended up being as good as it was. So much so that the second the credits rolled, I literally just like looked at my friend and I was like, I loved that. I was like, I love that. And she was like, oh, yeah, it was actually pretty good. And I was like, dude, I loved that. And it was almost the same feeling I got last year when I went to see Scream 6, where like as soon as the credits rolled, we were left the theater and like got in the car and I was like, is it controversial to say that that's, like, the best movie I've seen in a while? And my friend was like, "No, seriously, that was awesome." Like, so, like, again, it's like, it was that same feel. Even the same thing with, like, Evil Dead Rise. I was like, I left the theater and I was like, "I loved that. I loved that. I loved every." I've seen that movie so many times. I love that movie so much. But I was literally like, I loved that. It was so freaking good. And that's how I feel about The First Omen. It's definitely gonna be one that I am gonna rewatch multiple times. I think it's gonna be in my rotation for like horror movies, and that says a lot because I don't really like to watch movies of that subject matter because I find them boring. But this one was definitely not boring. It was a lot of fun, very creepy, very eerie, kind of disturbing, kind of off-putting, but definitely a great watch overall, and I highly recommend if you have Hulu or you have access to Hulu, you know somebody who you can go to their house and sit down and watch it with them because you know they'll like it. I highly recommend going and watching it, and who knows, you may not like this movie, and if you don't, that's totally fine. I'm completely like, I can take it. I can take it if you don't like the movies I love. So if you don't like this movie, that's totally cool. If you end up watching this movie and you feel the same way I do, where you're like, "Dude, this was solid." I think the other reason why I like this movie so much is because I had no expectations for it. It's not like Late Night with the Devil where I had way too many expectations. I walked into that movie expecting it to be like the biggest hit I've ever seen to satisfy my every need, and I was super underwhelmed with it. There's so many other movies that I get that with is because I had no expectations. Even when my friend on Threads was like, "No, this movie is freaking amazing. You're gonna love it." I was like, I still don't believe you. I'll believe you when I watch it. And I sat down and I watched it and it blew me away. So I think that's another reason why I liked it so much. And it doesn't always happen to me. There are times when people will like, oh my God, my cat just scared the crap out of me. I just felt her whisker against my calf and I thought it was a bug. Oh my goodness, I thought she was on my bed still. Okay, anyways, but yeah, no, I like there's a lot of times where people tell me I like a movie and I watch it and I love it and I already knew I'd like it. And there's a lot of times where people are like, I don't think you're gonna like this, and I don't like it. So yeah, I am open to everybody's interpretation. Like I said, you might sit down and watch this on Hulu and just not vibe with it, and that's totally okay. Like I said, I can definitely see where people wouldn't vibe with it. But my honest opinion, this is one of the high points of horror in 2024. I haven't seen much else of horror in 2024 yet. There is a movie that I am going to be watching later this weekend called Stop Motion. There's another one coming out that I saw on Shudder that's like, I think it's Korean that I want to watch because I love Korean horror movies. Go figure. And also, we've got so many that are coming out. We've got Long Legs. We've got the rest of the Strangers trilogy, which I know people didn't like the first Strangers. I'm excited to see what it is when the whole series wraps up. We've got Terrifier 3, which I still need to watch Terrifier 2. In a Violent Nature just came out. I do want to see that. I've been hearing about this yoga kill, and I hope it's good. I hope it's good because y'all were going crazy about that cheese grater last year in Evil Dead Rise, and that was not that good. But I hope the yoga kill is. I mean, I've heard a lot about the yoga kill, so when that finally hits Shudder, I will be watching it. So we've got quite a bit of stuff that's going to be coming out. I think. Are we getting the Nosferatu remake this year? We might be getting the Nosferatu remake this year too. If we are, I'm pumped for that. I love Bill Skarsgård, so like I'm here for it. So I'm excited. It's gonna be. It seems like it's already kicking off to be a pretty great year for horror. And I can't wait to see what else that the world has in store, the world of horror has in store. But that is gonna be it for me. I loved the first Omen. If I were to give it a rating out of 5, I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. It's a solid film. I rarely give 5 out of 5s. I really give 5 out of 5s. There's always like room for improvement, but that one pretty damn close. Pretty damn close to perfect for me. Loved this movie, thought it was awesome. Check it out. Let me know what you think. I've got a stacked few weeks coming up for you guys as far as videos. My next video is going to be about an analog horror project that is, it's not going to be a positive video, I can tell you that much, but it's going to be about an analog horror project that I don't care for, but I do want to talk about it because there's a lot of things I want to talk about with this, and I've been wanting to talk about it for months, and I know I'm late on the trend, but just forgive me. I'm going to talk about it. I don't care. And then my video after that is going to be a big Halloween Horror Nights video. That's going to be fun. It's nothing to do with this year's current announcements, though we did get an announcement, but I'm waiting for the rest of the announcements, which I guarantee you by the end of this month, we're going to have all 4 IPs. We already got one. I'm not going to tell you what it is. If you haven't seen it, you can go Google it. But I'm excited to talk more about Halloween Horror Nights. And I'm gonna get back to doing my I watched every blank series and also my Does This Deserve to Be a Classic series. I have one movie. I'm trying to save it for July. It is a horror movie. I'm sure you guys can know where I'm going with this because it's, you know what happens in July every year on Discovery Channel. You know what happens. If you know, you know. And it fits with that theme. So I'm trying to wait till about July to make the movie. We'll see. I'm gonna be kicking it up this week. I'm going to work on that analog horror video, and then I'm also going to get started on my Halloween Horror Nights fun video. And then after that, we will do the Does This Deserve to Be a Classic of my summer horror film. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for checking everything out. If you liked this video, please subscribe to the channel because I am going to be making so many more videos like this and like many others. I have 2 series that I'm doing on my channel right now, and I have a whole thing about Halloween Horror Nights because we're fully in Halloween Horror Nights season. It starts as soon as they start making announcements. And I will be having some more theme park stuff coming up. Tiana's Bayou Adventure has already done cast member previews, but they're going to be opening at the end of this month, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I will be writing it and I will give you my creepy critique about something that's not actually creepy. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to doing more of these types of videos and other types of videos for you guys. This one's probably going to be my longest one, depending on how I edit it down, because I think there's a lot of spaces here where I'm just paying attention to my cat at this point. But we'll see. But anyways, if you, like I said, if you like my account, definitely follow me on, subscribe to my channel. I do post a lot on Threads. It's nonsense. I don't really care over there, so I'm just posting nonsense. It's not all horror. So you don't have to follow me on Threads if you don't want to, but you can follow me on Instagram. I'm going to try to be more active on Instagram and TikTok. I am going to try to be more active. It's just so hard right now. It's so hard. But I am going to try to be more active on TikTok and Instagram, so you can follow me over there. And also, yeah, just leave a comment, leave a like, let me know what you think. And I will see you guys in my next video, whenever that is. That should hopefully be within the next week. And thank you guys again for joining me so much in another creepy critique.